Good morning, everyone. I'm going to turn off the transcription for myself. Okay. Hi, all. Laurel Ullman, Department of Mental Health. I'm the director of the Child, Adolescent, and Family Unit and project director for Project Aware for DMH with SAMHSA. It was great to meet many of you last week. Really hope that you found that energizing and helpful for some grounding, and much more to come around gaining more, understanding and direction of where we're going. We had talked about today being an opportunity for folks to ask questions about your budgets, and just in general, is there anything either following last week or other things that have come up since then that you want to pose questions about? And those of us from either the state or the TA folks will do our best to try to provide support. So it looks like most of us are state or TA folks, but we've got Sean and we've got Martha, and we might have a couple of others, but like I said, others might be watching this later. So this is your time to ask questions. We'll pull what resources we can get access to help answer those. So what would be most helpful?
I'm gonna
Martha?
apologize. Yeah, I'm right here. I'm in a very loud room, so I don't have headphones yet, and I'm still getting used to a bunch of new equipment was thrown at me. So, and I like
Okay.
technically did my job yesterday. So, um,
We
I
couldn't
guess.
hear anything in the background, so you're good.
Oh, perfect, because there's like big trucks going right by, so, because the windows are open. I guess last week a lot of information was thrown at us. We put together a few different worksheets and so forth. And I guess, and this is me being overwhelmed because again, I started just yesterday and I'm going back and looking at everything we did last week. And I guess, and I'm going to meet with Kim on Friday too. So I'm trying to figure out, now that we've done all that work, where I should start, where I like to build a plan. And I guess that's what I'm kind of thinking about right now.
Yeah, I think some of the pieces of what you all put together last week, and that implementation plan is a good thought. I don't know, Kim, if you are able to come on or if others from the TA folks have some thoughts about this to share.
No, I just unmuted. Is the background noise annoying?
When you're talking, it's fine. When you're not
I'll
talking,
just
that's
talk
what
a
we hear.
lot. So, Martha, welcome to day 2. And I think
Thank you.
that Friday we can really kind of try to prioritize and triage where you'd like to start, and also consider scheduling some DCLT meetings so you can get those important people at the table to look at all the hard work that you did last week, and that they can make those decisions with you so you don't feel like you're having to make unilateral decisions. And then just reviewing those documents that you participated in creating last week, I think, just to kind of wrap your head around which one makes the most sense to you, or which one you would think about prioritizing. Does that help?
Yes, very much so. Thank you. Yeah, we're still putting together DCLT as well. So that, I guess that's also why I'm feeling overwhelmed, because like last week we were like, maybe we want these people, maybe we don't. And I think we're going to solidify that this week, but that's also been on the back of my mind. So
Sounds like you're in the right place of process-wise. It is a lot of just trying to understand what is the framework that you're trying to work within, and then making some of those decisions, weighing the pros and cons, seeing who's available. Yep. And as Kim said, that might change and evolve. And you might bring people in on certain topics that you want to make sure you're talking through. As you get into the universal screener, process of trying to figure out what ones do we research, what's out there, how do we consider engaging all the different people who should weigh in on that from within the school, from families, et cetera. That's a good conversation to have with your DCLT. What else? This is your time to ask as many questions as you want. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Laurel. Thank you so much. First, I wanted to apologize. I'm sorry. I'm dealing with some phone calls with some staffing issues that I have going on today. But today is centered, correct me if I'm wrong, but today is centered primarily around budget questions, right?
It doesn't have to be. I mean, welcome to talk about budget. But if you have other questions, don't hesitate to ask those either.
I have some more, my questions in terms, I have a lot of questions around the budget, but really just looking
Yeah.
for, I had talked to Mariana about really just kind of sitting down and getting kind of like a general rundown of the budget and just looking for
Mhm.
like the most basic, kind of the most basic rundown and understanding that I could find. But really the questions that I have are more geared towards district specific. There's a lot of discussion during the Best Institute around the rollout within the Berry Supervisory Union, mostly centered around whether or not it would be Berry City Elementary specific or whether it would be district wide. And there was some confusion, around whether or not that would be district wide or it would be elementary specific.
Mhm.
Wondering if there's any more information available around that.
So I will say, Tracy Watterson, Kate, and I are going to be meeting with the new superintendent, Joanne, tomorrow morning, late morning. She reached out to us, started with Mariana, and got my email through that. And so we want to be able to sit down with her. It sounds like she's going to bring in her curriculum director and then maybe someone from HR. We're going to give an overview of Project Aware with Joanne as the new superintendent. Talk about just, what's the big vision? What are the goals and activities, the funding, the resources that this will bring? How does it fit within kind of the broader context of the work that AOE does, that the district is doing, and the relationship with you all? And then, because she had some questions, she said, there's some concerns, there's questions. This started with people who are no longer here. So our hope, and we had been wanting to do this, and I think that's partly, Sean, why the DCLT ended up being canceled, because it just, a lot has been swirling. So it does feel right that this starts with a state level conversation with the leadership in the district, and then we can go from there. As far as do they make a decision about starting in just one school or looking at it district wide? I think that needs to be part of our conversation with her. I know Jane last week was start where it makes sense to start. Ultimately, the intent of this project is to have things understood and systematized as much as we can at a district level to impact the different schools. But if some of that needs to start with some piloting or like testing out of things within a certain school that then, the district level folks can be engaged with and think about, okay, now how do we think about this for this other grade level school building? I think that's doable. I just don't want it to feel or be understood that, okay, we can just do it in this school and we don't have to think anywhere beyond that, because that's not the goal of this.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, any others want to weigh in on that?
So Laurel, I guess you'll have your meeting and we'll have a holiday and
Yeah.
then we'll hear from you kind of what the status is at that point and how
Yeah.
we're going to move forward with Barry. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thanks
Yeah.
for all your help with this.
Yeah, absolutely. We really deeply appreciate it.
Yesterday was a scramble, so thank you
I
very
bet.
much.
And I'm really sorry that it took so long. I was hoping to connect with our AOE partners, and it was just one of those days. So, but we talked more this morning. Go ahead, Kate.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think, we're aware of how important it is to have the district leadership on board.
Yeah.
And that's tricky with a new incoming administration that, is just trying to get a sense of where the district is overall. So I think, as Laurel said, the starting place isn't as important around the shared vision of kind of what we're working toward. And so I think that's kind of what, to help Joanne and the new leadership understand what the scope of this project is and answer questions and get a sense of, their their vision and then once we have that, then we can start wherever needed, as long as we sort of have shared understandings about what this work means for the system as a whole. And I've just come out of a district where we had a lot of initiatives going on that the leadership wasn't necessarily fully supporting. And I know how, I mean, that's just
It's hard.
really challenging for the staff who are trying to make change in schools. So I think that's what we want to sort through carefully. And I think too, when you're thinking about your DCLTs, don't rush that step of making sure that you're getting the right people at the table, because I think it can be tempting with all of this energy to just want to jump right into the work. And we know, the district leaders don't have to be engaged in all of the work, but they do need to understand it and be willing to support it and invest in it over time, in order to, for things to align well, and for you not to find that you're starting in one direction and then district leadership pivots to another. So I think
Yeah.
that's why these starting conversations and shared understandings are so important.
I really appreciate that, Kate. I'll get to you in a sec, Sherry. My hope, my goal for this conversation tomorrow is hearing what their concerns are, knowing already, just because of what we heard from the prior superintendent, that there is a lot happening in that district and in your region, and just trying to convey, like, this can be a real resource to help address some of the areas that I'm assuming, and I'm hoping to hear, she's wanting to start to get at. And so trying to find those commonalities to build from. My ideal, I feel like I've heard people kind of wonder, well, can it actually happen? Is it possible that Barre might pull out? I don't want to have a district pull out of this project. I would much prefer to figure out, where can we start and how do we build from that place? That's my goal here. I don't know what this together mode is that just got created, but did someone just create that? Because that is very odd.
Sorry, I'm pressing buttons over here.
Okay.
I've never used this format before, so sorry.
I've never seen it happen for everyone. I've seen it that you can do it for yourself, but okay.
Yep, sorry about
I
that.
can hang out on wherever that is. So I hope that helps also, just kind of the approach that I want to take with it. Okay, Sherry, go for it.
Just to contribute to the what you might want to share tomorrow. I don't know, but the team that attended from Barre City Elementary were pretty excited and motivated about the work ahead, and so I think that's important to acknowledge. They were not invited to be on the DCLT, so there is a really strong sense, and Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a really strong sense of both the need and there's a strong interest within that school. But these are not leadership folks, so it's a little delicate. But they would love to move this work forward. Sean, right?
Yeah, absolutely. By the end of the week, we had kind of we really made this shift from being really skeptical in the beginning of the week around what product aware was going to look like, what the involvement was going to look like. And by the end of the week, especially the team members that have come, the teachers, the school counselors, the social worker, had really made the 180 and had really come on board with Product Aware. One of the things I also really appreciated in terms of the Strand training and the conversations around the DCLT was the overall messaging that this team is going to be fluid, right? We're going to have ad hoc members that are going to come in and join in at times. There was a lot of confusion in the beginning around this, really wanted to be concrete about who's going to be in the DCLT that needs to be these members. And I really appreciated the conversations we had around that. This is really going to be a fluid team where some team members are going to have a higher level of involvement. We'll have some ad hoc members that'll come in at times. And I think that really helped clear up some of the confusion that was going on with the DCLT. But yeah, really excited to move forward for sure.
Great. Okay. Do you want to ask some of your budget questions? I'm sorry, Rebecca, I missed your hand.
I just think to add to that, there's just such a lot of dynamic that underlies this situation, history, what happened leading up to and during the week. And there's been, as we move through this, like there's been so much disheartenment, I think, with staff, and it's a particular strength that they feel this passion, and they also feel frightened that it will be swept away because they've had that experience as well. And so as we move forward, like there's new leadership, there's new discussions, but I just want to make sure that we capture and build on that strength and honor those team members, and with more than just thanks for your work, we're going to take it into account. And I mean, it's not our call, right? Because we're not their supervisors, but I think that's really, really important.
Agreed.
I want to just briefly echo that real quick, Rebecca, because I think one of the conversations that was important that we had was when they made this shift from this 180, these are our team members that are going to go back into the Berry Supervisor Union, back into Berry City Elementary. They're going to have conversations with their coworkers about what their experience was. They're actively advocating to be a part of the team. If when we talk about addressing climate and culture, continuing to have them contribute as members is going to be really important.
Good point.
I'm just going to jump in real quick. And, the good news about all of this as well is that we have a very strong mental health agency who understands the work and can jump in so easily. So, it's just so wonderful to have Sean part of this work. And I think it's got great potential.
Hear, hear.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So Sean,
I did have
budget questions. Yeah.
I was just about to say, I did have a quick budget question to fire off. Is there kind of trying to get an understanding of what documentation is available for the budget? I do have from the Department of Mental Health, kind of the vendor must complete list in terms of the budget and categories. Is there any other documentation that's available for the budget?
I'm sorry, I missed what you said. I didn't understand what you said.
I have the Department of Mental Health, the request of payment and financial report. Is there any other documentation for the budget that's available besides that?
I mean, there's a budget in each of your agreements with DMH, right? So that's in your payment provisions. And then we have, there was a LEA budget update template that I believe was shared out, where because there were certain line items that we put in kind of a blank or a blanket total amount for the social emotional universal screening tool and for the mental health programming, we actually need more detail about how will those funds be spent, because we have to submit that to SAMHSA. So let me just do a really quick, especially Martha and Sean, you weren't part of an initial office hours where we did some overview of budget. I think it's recorded, so we can get that recording to you guys, but I'll just say really quickly. So these are SAMHSA funds, right? Federal funds that flow from SAMHSA to DMH. We then flow them out to the different entities through either a contract or a grant. And so for the LEAs, there were some placeholders. Each of you have funds, both LEAs and DAs, funds for your staff coordinators. Sean, I think you have a little bit of other funding for maybe materials or office supplies or stuff like that there, and a cell phone, and then the participation in the BEST Institute. But I think yours was a little more limited. And then there were some additional funds in the LEA budget for Oh, and travel. You had some in-state travel to get to meetings and all that. In the LEA one, it's the social emotional mental health and wellness practices. So once you all do your kind of systems inventory and get a sense of what are your needs, what do you have currently, where are your gaps, or where do you want to kind of reshift things? The LEAs have a line item of $80,000 each year to be able to purchase additional social, emotional, mental health, wellness activities, practices, programs, whatever kind of the DCLT decides can best address those gaps that you've identified. And you know, it should be a DCLT process of using data to drive decisions around what is it that we want to add to our comprehensive programming approach to this. So it could be, you know, some districts, I think most districts have a social emotional learning curriculum, but maybe not, or maybe you don't have one for a certain grade level, you know, school grade level. And so it could be purchasing something like that. It could be bringing in some additional programming with a certain mental health focus. You know, maybe there's something around anxiety that you want to be sure you're providing supports for students at a kind of tier 2 level. I'm just kind of coming up with broad examples, but that is a budget line item that's in the LEA budget each year of the grant. But before we can have any spending under that line item, DMH needs to see a detailed budget from the LEA, and then we actually have to submit it to SAMHSA. we have a meeting with SAMHSA next week where I'm posing the question to them. We know we owe you this budget detail. They actually wanted it back in like December. We have continued to put them off to say, you know, implementation plan needs to come first. You know, we're still in process. But my question to them is, we know we owe this to you. Once we give it to you, and once we have it from the LEAs, can the LEAs start spending it down, or is there some approval process that has to happen before then the LEA can start to spend under that category? So I hope to get that answer. We'll push that out to you all, because that would create some kind of, you know, lag between when we submit and if they say we have to, SAMHSA has to approve it before we can spend it. We'll have to tell you what that anticipated time frame is. My hope is not. They just want to know how we're spending it. So we need the detail for the social emotional wellness practices, the $80,000, and then there's that universal screening tool line item for $40,000. That, again, we need the budget detail. We have to submit that to SAMHSA, but that can cover anything related to implementing a universal screening tool. Some LEAs already have a tool. And so this might be adding more user licenses. This might be paying for the IT systems to talk to one another between the tool and your own school data. It might be training, because I know in Slate Valley's not on, but I know in Slate Valley they had a universal screening tool in their district, but then when the other district joined them, that other district doesn't have one. And so they need to add more licenses, they need to train people, blah, blah, blah. For those of you who don't have one yet, this can support your process. So once you identify one, is it a free tool? If not, you know, this can help cover some of those costs. It could cover the cost of training, the IT stuff. Like I said, kind of anything that can support that implementation of the tool and being able to, because it's one of the data points that we have to submit to SAMHSA is how many students have been screened for social emotional mental health. And so this is in service of that. And again, this is a dollar amount that's in the budget each year. And so we anticipate turnover, we anticipate deepening of understanding of the use of the tool, and that might lead to other technological needs or, you know, training, who knows what. I'll pause there. Go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking about what it might look like on the ground a little bit. And there's a lot of coordination involved with like figuring out the screen, you know, coordinating the teams,
Yes.
figure this could funding support personnel to take the time to do the research and meet outside of school parameters. But for example, I think sometimes we don't do it because we don't have the time, and to really give it a lot of attention. I just wonder, would that be an acceptable billable thing?
So I know we had that question, and we said, let me say, I don't want to say a flat yes. I want to say we would consider that on a case-by-case basis. I don't think it's reasonable to say a chunk of this universal screening tool line item is going to go towards staffing all year, each year for 5 years. And I don't think that's what you're saying, but that's where it's like, it depends, right? So if
Yeah.
it's about the implementation, you know, that early phase of researching, gathering information, gathering people, I'd want to understand what are the uncovered costs, because these SAMHSA funds cannot supplant other funds.
Right.
If you already have someone who's paid in their role, and this falls under something that might be their general category, you know, of work anyway. Should we be paying, or is this kind of outside of an additional time that's not already covered because they're running on a 10-month school contract and this is work that's going to happen this summer? So we said yes to a district who asked a question around that, of pulling people together this summer to do work around the preparation for their universal screening tool, because those people's time otherwise isn't covered. And it is to help get, you know, to do some of this initial work. So we did say yes to that. I think it's like, what's the ongoing piece of it, if that makes sense? Because the reason for that is because we put this under a certain category with SAMHSA, not under a salary staff category, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
So this is
sure.
almost more like a stipend-y
Yeah.
type of thing for people's time.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking like if I was in one of the positions, I would might want to access a national expert, let's say Kathleen Lane, who I, you know, totally admire and feels like she's like the queen of screening. Maybe hire her to
Yeah.
do some sessions with
That's
the
training.
team, and that's
Or
training.
TA, yeah.
Yeah, TA to support screening. Okay, I just
Yep.
was thinking that's a good example.
Yes.
Thank you.
I will also say, if every if every LEA feels like that could be beneficial for them and we could do it across the 3 LEAs, I would almost think about us, we have some unspent funds. We, you know, every federal award that the state gets, we have a delayed start. And so we always have, we have to budget for the full year, but we only, we don't start until at least 3 months in. So we have some unspent funds. I would even think about, like, is that a good use of unspent funds? So it's not coming out of the LEA individual budgets, but is from our statewide unspent bucket, if you will, that we could do that kind of, hey, this would be a great opportunity training for everybody to participate in. So yeah, those are good things for us to be hearing. What are people thinking? Oh, that might be more than just CCSU who's interested. Let's explore this from others too.
Yeah, I think that's great also from a state perspective. I'm sorry, I stole the mic again.
Same topic.
Because of the sort of semi-confusion about the formal screens around mental health disorders and other kinds of screeners that schools are using more commonly that they don't screen for that level. So it might be something that the state should consider anyway, as some technical assistance with Kathleen, and I will be quiet now.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Okay, Rebecca, go for it.
I think another example that might be at the LEA level, Barry was talking, you know, very initially just kind of talking about it, it's not gone anywhere, about Panorama and sort of thinking about Panorama. And so I know that process is people learning about it, and you know, you're on with a Panorama person, even to get the information, but then as you get, you know, determining like, well, which pieces would be helpful, the screener, well, maybe also school climate, or like what things would be helpful, what pieces, and then getting people up to speed about how to use the dashboard and how to work with the data. So that could be an example of, you might need to stipend some people around that. who aren't, who aren't on a full year contract potentially, or doing additional work, just as an example.
Yeah, I think for anything that isn't already kind of laid out in the budget, it's just about dialogue between the entity, so the LEA or the DA or the TA, and DMH. Is this an appropriate use of these funds? So yeah. I'm trying to read Kim's comment. Is the line item for social emotional behavioral learning programming used for purchasing curriculum and interventions based on what the universal screener identified as needs, or can the universal screener line item be used for that? Oh, I think the concept was the universal screening tool line item is for the tool and the initial phases of identifying, implementing, adopting, installing, all of that. And that the social emotional mental health wellness practices is where learning curriculum or other programming would fall under. If the full amount of the universal screening tool that's allocated isn't needed, we can then have conversations about reallocating some of those funds into the mental health programming line item and, making some of those adjustments. So that's totally flexible. Not totally flexible. It's open for consideration and conversation. We, within our budget with SAMHSA, are allowed a certain amount of rebudgeting without their prior approval. And so we've given a percentage of that permission in each of your individual agreements. I'm sorry, I now have a lot of background noise. I'm hoping it's not coming because I'm just continually talking. But if we start to hit that threshold, we'll have to do a prior approval request to SAMHSA and wait for their approval before we can kind of reallocate things. But because those are the two line items that SAMHSA wanted us to submit more detail on for their review and approval, I suspect we would need to resubmit to say, we're only going to use 20,000 for the screening tool, and we're going to move 20,000 up to the mental health programming, and here's how we're going to spend that. You will be amazed. I'm not going to bore you with the detail, but the level of detail I have to put into SAMHSA's budget template, line by line, literally, like what is the hotel cost for each staff attending the Summer Institute? Like that's the level of kind of detail that they're looking for. So we'll need to say, is this something that's going to be a sub-agreement with an external entity under contract to come in and provide training? What are the costs of that, et cetera? Other questions related to those things? I think it is, great that there are some free tools to consider. I think some districts have gone with those, and then the costs are really more in the getting your IT systems, ready, and then in the training, so that you're not paying for each use of the screening tool itself. And BEST has a great list of tools that they know are out there and that some people have used. We also, if there's interest, could bring in one of the prior Project Aware regions and have them talk about what was their process around some of this, if that would be helpful. I don't know.
I was going to say, I'd actually think that'd be a really wonderful idea. I actually reached out to the previous Project Aware coordinator from the Moyle County to set up a meeting with her, just to kind of discuss what her overall experience was, kind of some of the hiccups she had run into, some of the successes she had, just to kind of get a better overall view of what her experience was.
That's a great idea. Is that Katina from the DA or from the LEA? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a great point. Good contact. What other questions?
This isn't budget related. I'm still gonna work with our budget person here before I come up with my questions. But a couple weeks ago, we got an email from you about connecting us to a SharePoint site.
Yes.
And then you said we'd be, someone would reach out to us. That person hasn't reached out, have they?
Oh, I would have thought you would have gotten an email from them a
Not
while
yet.
ago.
No,
Mm, okay. Can you check your spam folder, or have you?
I did. There's nothing in there. So,
Okay.
and I've been going between 2 devices, 2 emails. So that's why I asked, because I wanted to make sure I hadn't missed something.
And I know like you're on day 2, but your email and all that was working and set up prior to
Yeah,
that, so
that's
it
how
should
I
have
knew
come through.
about it. Yeah.
Huh, okay. Let me look into that. Sean, did you get one? From David Pepper or
So I did.
ADS?
Yes.
You did, okay. Were you able to get onto the site?
Yes, I was.
Great, okay.
If you remember, Laurel, I had the same situation that Martha's talking about. I never got it and you helped me, but anyway. So.
Okay, we'll see what we can figure out.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything from the TA best folks that you want to pass on? Since we have a little time. Go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah, I was just thinking about maybe scheduling topic-based office hours into the future. And you know, if universal screening is a topic, we could do that.
That's been our plan, and that was definitely one of the top on our list.
Okay, great. There were some
Other-
we were talking about practices as well, maybe as time goes
Mhm.
on, certain proven practices that really support mental health intervention in schools, prevention and intervention in schools. So maybe
Yeah.
like within the next week or 2, we could have like lay out a few things, and wondering what Martha and Sean might be interested
Mhm.
in joining office hours to do.
Tim's also suggesting polling folks.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that idea, Sherry. I think that's a fantastic idea. I also wanted to follow up. I think one of the things that could be a really wonderful resource as we move forward with Project Aware is if we established a meeting where the coordinators came together, whether on a monthly basis or something
Yes.
along those lines. I know that we had briefly discussed it at the conference. Just wanted
Yep.
to follow up on that.
I would love that because I know I'm not the only one trying to figure this out.
Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I think we did that in the last iteration. We might have even mentioned it at one point, whether it was a best or not, I'm not sure. And it was helpful. And I know, Ken, you're already meeting with the coordinator. I think it's weekly. So maybe we can coordinate, maybe in the beginning more than monthly, weekly, just to get some of those questions answered, particularly about your role. And also, I think the only person right now who hasn't hired is NKHS. Is that correct? What's the status, Ken, for you?
Oh, for me?
Well, is your person leaving?
Yes, so she's currently employed on a basis to fill in. They had a couple candidates they were in. I don't believe they found anybody yet at you.
Ken, we're losing sound.
Are you?
Yeah, it's really hard to hear you. Their UCS's candidate is leaving. Did you say they have some other options?
No, they don't. They were doing some interviews, but I haven't heard that they have found a viable candidate yet.
Got it. Thanks.
And Barry, LEA coordinator, I think is, I don't know where that's at, but there was some movement toward interviewing.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure where that is, but I do know that they had 2 interviews scheduled.
So we should probably put that on hold a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it could be helpful for those who are currently here,
Yeah.
especially because they don't have a local partner.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay, would you like the best team to start setting some of that up and maybe doing the poll around the office hours, or
If
is
you
that
have
something the
capacity.
state wants to do?
I mean, I think it'd be great for the TA folks to, if there's capacity. So I guess bring that back to Cassandra,
Yes,
to support those coordinator meetings. We could put out a poll, I think.
okay,
We could do like some kind of survey about topics for office hours.
great.
Yeah, we're still including JK. You know, she is working
Yeah.
per diem for a while to fill in. So let's include her until something else happens.
Great.
Great.
Any
How do you
other?
spell JK?
Oh, it's like JC, JACEE.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
But she says JK, which is unusual. Yeah.
Anything else?
That's all I had for today.
Okay. Just thinking back to some of the conversations we had about the office hours and a potential focus on universal screening, I think that's maybe the place to start, to do kind of a high level overview of kind of best practice of that implementation process. And then there'll probably be a need for some more detailed conversation. And so it's kind of a question of like, who would that next phase be with? And would it be individualized per LEA? Would it be kind of a more of a statewide thing? That's just my assumption that it's hard to cover all that you would want to cover in a 1 hour office hours, but that's a good opportunity for like that high level overview, and then the more detailed support and step-by-step piece might be beyond that, beyond an office hours. Does that make sense, Sherry? I'm kind of looking at you. You can't tell I am.
Yeah, and I think within our team, it would probably be me that would provide the, I'm not available next Tuesday. So,
It's okay.
okay,
Yep.
yeah. So I'm not sure what the topic for next Tuesday would be, but we can, Cassandra's off for a few days and we can sort of figure out when that would work and whether that's the work I should do.
Okay.
Does that make
That
sense?
sounds great. Yep.
Yeah. We could,
All right.
I'm not going to be here next week, but it would be really cool to talk about this intervention also that we're pretty excited about. Ken, the REP program.
Yeah, we can certainly do a little overview of that at
Yeah.
office hours. That would be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it will kind of, it sort of help motivate sort of the what's the best word, inspire sort of what it looks like around mental health capacity within a school, and where that goes a little bit differently from the way we've been traditionally doing that. So I would put those, if the poll goes to us, we'll put that on there.
Okay.
And we would be interested in that.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll do some talking about what next week's topic
Okay.
will be. Not those two. We won't put pressure on you to get those going. And yeah, thank you all for hopping on. I know it's a interesting week with the holiday and all that, but I think it's been helpful for me at least to hear where folks are at. And I think good to reconnect after last week. So appreciate it and enjoy some fun and safe time off. And we'll catch up next week.
Okay, you too.
Great.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks all.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.